Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to another installment of Show to Be with Mike G, the show of life, the show of Scotch Whisky, Islay, Kilchoman, and so much more. I have some of these interviews that I've done across the years, and I haven't put all of them out. It just too much time passes. Others, the people are out of the industry. They're not as relevant as they once were. But this interview really is a moment in my travels around the world that's something I've really, really appreciated. And so on one fine afternoon, despite many scheduling mix-ups, I got to sit down and interview the founder of Kilchoman single malt Scotch Whisky from Islay, Anthony Wills. And I didn't get the confirmation, so I found out maybe an hour before, and I do like to do some prep and things. So we sit down and we have this really beautiful chat about Kilchoman, about Anthony's life, and so much more. I wish I could describe to you how beautiful the room was in which we recorded. It was kind of like a boardroom, a tasting room, and there's these really tall windows when you look out, and there's this vast greenness where they're growing the barley outside. And it was a relatively clear day in Islay. I mean, that stuff doesn't happen. We kind of talk about the weather a little bit, but despite all the storms and the tropical depressions that I battled through to head to Islay, I arrived safely. And without further ado, I hope you enjoy this great conversation and result of the trip with the founder of Kilchoman single malt Scotch Whisky, Anthony Wills.
Bit of both, really.
Yeah.
I think the Scotch whisky industry has done a pretty good job being traditionalist.
Yeah.
But I think when you come into an industry as a new kid on the block, with all these old traditional distilleries that have been in existence for 150, 200 odd years, you have to show yourself in a different light.
Yeah.
To make yourself stand out, and that's what we try to do. But we're reasonably traditional in terms of cask maturation, but we've tweaked it here and there with different cask maturations. But it's every distillery is doing the same process.
Yeah.
We're not doing anything different because that's how you do it. But you try and tweak things and highlight things in the process that people are interested in, and that's what we try and do.
Would the word measured be correct in saying that the challenges or the glides that you take to be innovative are still quite measured?
Yes, I think that's true. Look, I'm older, and therefore I suppose my sons are all in the business would say I'm reasonably conservative.
Really?
But I think what I had the foresight and the insight and the imagination to actually start a new distillery before probably a lot of people have done so in the last 5-10 years or so. And, that took balls to do it.
Yeah.
Back when we did it. I'm very glad we did now, but there were huge, massive challenges. Least of all was the funding of a new distillery. And I didn't really have anyone to benchmark against particularly. The previous new distillery had been Arran in 95.
Is that right? I didn't know that. Okay.
1995. And then we come along in 2005, along with Daft Mill, which is over in Fife, who we know very well, and they do things in a different way. We needed to be a bit more commercial, I suppose, if you like to say that.
Commercial in flavor profile or branding or
more sort of branding and getting our name out there. With Daft Mill have gone the sort of collectible, very limited releases. Yeah. We wanted to get our brand out there, and we've fortunately been reasonably successful at that. And I think our timing was pretty good because everybody around the world was suddenly getting into single malt Scotch whisky. And being an Islay single malt, helped hugely because of the profile of all the distilleries here who've been doing it for many, many years, have put Islay firmly on the map.
Absolutely.
And, the profile and character of our whiskey is something that people enjoy. So we didn't want to go away and say we're going to produce a completely different style of Islay single malt. That would be crazy. We wanted to be traditional in that respect, and then tweak it slightly by basing ourselves on a farm, working farm and growing a bit of barley. That's really where our uniqueness and point of difference has been. And I think people are bought into that because there's no doubt that people like the provenance, tradition,
absolutely,
and traceability and all these things. And I think that's helped build our profile.
Well, it's one of the things that you're known for. You could almost call it a legacy, right? In terms of the brand perception. But it makes me wonder, because I know you're a fan of outdoor sailing and not good at golf, self-appointed, I suppose. But do you consider yourself at the branding piece of it better, or the production side? Because I know your background in wine, which might give you a really, really refined palate, but which do you maybe prefer, and which do you think you're actually better at?
I probably think I was better at the sales and marketing, but I think my sons would challenge me on that and say that probably the best place for me is back at base and looking after the quality of the spirit and cask maturation. And I must admit, that's now what I tend to be doing more and more of.
Yeah.
And the boys are now in charge of sales and marketing. Look, I spent 7 or 8 years on the road promoting and marketing Kilchoman, taking my new spirit around the world back in 2007 and 8. Everyone thought it was bloody crazy. Who would want to taste my new make spirit? But it seemed to work because people were beginning to be fascinated about the whole industry, and they get a chance to taste 10 and 15 and 20-year-old, even older single malts. But there was me out there with my new make spirit, and it sort of set the tone, because I think people were starting to be very interested in the whiskey production side of things. And timing is everything in this world, and we were lucky with the timing in terms of people being switched on to single malt whiskey, and especially Islay single malt.
Timing is everything. So going back a little bit, because I know, again, as an independent bottler, which you're first getting a kind of foray into Scotch, and then before that working with wine for, I'm not exactly sure how long, but we shall discuss it. But before that, we're all posed with this question: what do you want to be when you grow up? Wine seldom is the first answer of folks, although a beautiful industry with so many different personalities, so many different places around the world. But for you, was that always what you wanted to do, be in sales and to be in what I consider hospitality, or you have another path cut out for you?
I think in the wine trade, I was in sales and marketing.
Yeah, right.
Look, we took a life-changing decision when we were living in Bristol. I was commuting to London, not really enjoying what I was doing, and we took a look at ourselves and thought, no, how about moving to Scotland? We had family up here, and I had contacts in the whiskey industry, and so that was, I'm one of these people who makes pretty decisions reasonably quickly. I have a thought about it. We think about it. We talk about it to my wife and I, and then we go for it. And we did. We went for it, and we moved 29 years ago to Scotland and switched from the wine industry into the Scotch whisky industry. Became an independent bottler. Saw the rise of interest by being an independent bottler in the premium end of the Scotch whisky industry, and I thought, and then it became more difficult to buy single casks from sources. Because they all saw that they were giving something away that they should be marketing themselves.
Right.
And so those well-known distillery brands weren't so available. So I thought, what the hell, I'll build a distillery. And where am I going to build my distillery? Islay, because my wife's family had a place here. So it all sort of came into line like that. I'm not a person who sits down with my accountant and writes out a business plan, and he turns around to me and tells me, you're completely mad. We're going to have to take you off to somewhere
Asylum
to keep you safe.
Yeah.
I saw the way the industry was moving, and I thought, right, there's no doubt that if we could build a distillery, and it's reasonably good liquid, we'll be able to sell this. That's the end I came from. But I think a lot of people, to be fair, had thought about building a distillery, who were in the industry for a number of years, but thought it was too risky.
Right.
For very good reasons, because it was very high risk, incredibly high risk. So they all backed away from it, and I ploughed ahead. And, it was tough. I mean, it was very tough.
I've heard some of the stories of the difficulties, if you will, the tensions, and we don't even have to get into that, but it's tough being in this industry, just in general. But I do want to ask you, because I feel like maybe we share something in common, maybe among other characteristics, but I don't ever look back when I make a decision. When I make it, it's done. I've only once ever got back with an ex-girlfriend because I made that decision and I've moved on. But I think underlying in that decision is that I'm not afraid to fail anymore. But a lot of people are. So you taking on this grand gesture, building a distillery, are you ever afraid of failing?
No. I think I felt that it could succeed. There was always the times when we might not have succeeded through lack of funding.
Sure.
And so that was the biggest challenge back then. I was very fortunate. I had a tremendous guy, Jim Swan, sadly not with us anymore, who was my consultant and held my hand through the whole process. And, did a fantastic job for me, and as he has done for a number of distilleries around the world, new distillery startups. I remember meeting Jim back in 2002 in Edinburgh. I'd met him once before, but this was the first time we'd really sort of sat down. And I literally gave him a few lines about the type and style of spirit that I want to produce and the whiskey that I would hope would mature relatively quickly. And that we could get it out on the market reasonably quickly, because obviously just letting it mature for 10 or 15 years was never going to be something that we could afford to do.
Yeah.
But, that's where the timing comes in, because the market and the consumer was accepting of having a look at non-aged single malt whiskey of 3 years of age. Well, if I'd done that 5 years ago, we'd been dead in the water. So I think for me, not having Jim Swan was the biggest decision, the right decision I made, because he then went away, built the distillery, or designed all the equipment to achieve what I was looking for. And by God, he got it right. I mean, we ran the stills for the first time, and the spirit had this wonderful sort of creamy, clean character to it. And he just sort of said, well, if we look after this, in other words, fill into good quality wood, you'll be able to release this at 3 or 4 years of age. And that's what we did.
This is to quote you. Now, after lunch, you get a little bit of a haze, so I might be paraphrasing you. But cask is king. Do you feel that way?
Yeah, I do, because I think we can talk a lot about different production processes through the production as being able to tweak those slightly here and there, and absolutely you can. But really, when it comes down to it, is the cask type and style. And also the fresher wood, not sort of old refills. The older the cask is, the longer it'll take to come round, and that's fine, and it'll come round eventually, but it'll take a lot longer. So we were really filling first fill, maybe ex-bourbon and ex-Oloroso sherry, because we knew that would help us produce a style that would have a character. Maybe, I think a lot of people have said, maybe older than it tastes in terms of its profile.
Botoxed, so to speak.
Yeah. And fortunately, the consumer is everything in this industry, as it is in most industries. And fortunately, they enjoyed what they tasted, and we've gone from there. But, it's a long journey to get to a stage where you've got older and more mature single malt to offer people. But we're getting there now, and, in about a week, 10 days, we're releasing our first 16-year-old as a very small release. So that suddenly becomes quite interesting, and we're doing that in a small way. But it's been a long journey. I think when I set out, we'll be a small distillery. Let's go for 100,000 litres. Similar to Edinburgh, smallest distillery in Scotland. That sounded quite nice. And then we've gone from there. And we were never wanting to sell bulk to the industry. We always wanted to hold on to everything for our own brand and Kilchoman, and we've stuck to that pretty closely. We've sold the old cast to one or two independents, but certainly it's not something we do moving forward. And I think, and we have this desire to be a little, because of my wine background, we like to mature everything here, and we bottle everything here, and we think that has a part to play in being a sort of chateau bottle, if you like to put it that way.
It was funny that someone brought this up. One of my friends, he lives in Arizona, and he's going to be bringing in something called Bacanora, which is a spirit made in northern Mexico. And I make some stuff like that. I make a destilado and worked with Mexican plants, or desert plants rather. And he said there's something to be said about provenance when it's bottled where it was made. And obviously that's a very wine kind of mindset, right? Is that the main reason to do all of the things here? I'm sure you've got enough space, but to bottle, to age, to dilute, is it because of that wine background?
I think it has something to do with that, because of my initial career. But I think it's more of having total control.
Okay.
And I think that is a big thing for me. Customer is king as well as cask is king. Customer is king. And if you want to keep your customers on side, you want to get your orders out to them as and when they want them. And you can do that much more easily if you control the whole process right the way through.
I love that. Do you cook?
A little bit. My wife would say I don't cook. I'm not a good cook, that's for sure.
In what other ways do you have the ability to exercise that amount of control and detail in your other parts of your life? Golf is one, but you say you're not quite good at golf. So
well, you've obviously done your research. I'm hopeless at bloody golf. So, I used to be not bad. Though not bad means I could sort of hit a fairway occasionally. Sure. Now I can't hit a fairway at all. So I've almost given up. But I think for me, it all comes down to wanting to be slightly different to the other mainstream distilleries here, and that is about wanting to just show that we are different. I mean, look, the old distilleries for me and the big distilleries, are a very important part of the industry, and I feel that they've given me this opportunity, the way that they've marketed it and sold their whiskies around the world. Look, we just feel that if you can control everything yourself, you're in a far better position than contracting your bottling, which is what a lot of people do. The smaller independents do, and then you lose control of how and when your orders get bottled. So it's about really about looking after your customers, because at the end of the day, if you don't do that properly, they're going to be switched off pretty damn quickly.
Right. There's a term, and of course it resounds through the UK as well, but punk rock mentality, right? As a kid, did you have these same kinds of tendencies to maybe not conform, to do things your own way, dress a little different, think a little different? Well,
I don't think I was someone who didn't conform particularly. I had my own ideas and I was set in my ways, and I was. I think my parents would describe me as probably being single-minded.
Does that also mean stubborn?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, stubborn, and obstinate, and doing and always wanting to do my thing in my way. And I've always had this sort of slightly entrepreneurial streak about me, and always wanting, to. And I had a few businesses that didn't work, and then finally I get something that has been reasonably successful, but it's taken me a while to get there.
Sure.
Every entrepreneur would tell you that they've had plenty more failures than they've had successes, that's for sure.
But it's the destination out there as long as you keep driving towards it.
Keep trying, right? And don't give up.
I do wonder, because this is my first time to Islay and Scotland, actually, embarrassingly, because I've been to London so many times or in different areas of the world. But it's a very small place, not only in square mileage, but in terms of everybody knows everybody. I was having a drink at my hotel last night, and I said, I'm going to go visit the Brooklyn guys. Like, oh, we'll tell Alan hi. I'm like, how do you know? It's that kind of thing. And even though your wife's family she's from Ireland, at least her family's from Ireland.
No, her family had a place on Ireland. They never lived here full time.
Okay.
Yeah, they moved up here when they retired full time.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
does the concept of an outsider, did that ever hit you in terms of tension, or everybody was with open arms and said, yes, please come build the distillery?
To be honest, no, everyone had open arms.
That's amazing, yeah.
Look, living on Islay or an island anywhere is challenging in its own way, and Islay is no different, and it's a goldfish bowl. Yeah. Everybody knows what everybody's up to, and in fact, they know what I'm doing before I know it myself.
Well, and apparently they knew what you were doing before I knew what you were doing. So, but I would say that it's a testament to the hospitality and the warmth of this place, because London can be, but this is not always the warmest of places.
No, it's too big to be too warm and friendly, I think, and most places are like that. On the mainland here, even when we live near Glasgow, and you don't have the same warmth towards people, because people have busy lives and they're not particularly have time to stop and chat. Here, that's very different. 3,000 people permanently live here. Right. And if you don't know someone, you'll be able to talk to someone who knows them and find out all about them. And everybody bumps into each other the whole time.
Right.
And when I say about, they all know what I'm doing before I know it myself. It's about, because everybody knows about Kilchoman now. Mm-hmm. Yes, I'm English, and I came to live in Scotland 29 years ago, and we moved to Islay 18 years ago. But everyone's been incredibly friendly and helpful, and all the distilleries were incredibly helpful to me, or the managers were, when I started out. They thought I was completely nuts. There's no doubt.
What was the most ludicrous notion that they had? It's like, Anthony, you're crazy because of this. What is the thing that they thought was...
I think because, the first thing that everyone said is, why do we need another distillery? I mean, there are over 100 in Scotland already. That's a lot of distilleries. And there were 7 working distilleries here on Islay. So why the hell do you need another one?
Right.
And, understandably they say that. I don't think at that point they'd sort of appreciated necessarily the direction the industry was going. And so, I mean, I think, as I said earlier, it was one of those decisions that most people I came across thought, I must be barking mad and need to be carried away in a straitjacket. But, now you look back and, there's umpteen more new distilleries being built, not only in Scotland, but around the UK and around the world. It's phenomenal. And it's not just whiskey.
All kinds of things.
It's all kinds of things. And so the next 5 or so years are going to be interesting to see how it all pans out.
Do you find yourself that... My dad recently retired, and I'm going to put retired in air quotes. He retired, and then about within 3 to 6 months later, he started working again. He couldn't stop. Not because he was a workaholic, it wasn't that. It was that the work brought him so much joy and meaning, maybe more. Is there ever a day where you can walk away from this distillery and this legacy you might have built?
Well, look, I have to tell you, I never imagined we'd be in the position we are now. Yeah. If I'd looked and thought planned out my 20 years, I mean, we would never have been anywhere close to where we are now. Because I did it because I thought there was just a chance that we could make a small success, and we'd be a small little distillery, and we'd sell a bit of premium single malt. But to be in the position now, I'm hugely grateful. Will I walk away? No, because I think, and everyone says, oh, you'll sell the business. No, I won't. I mean, we enjoy it. And selling a business isn't what it's about, really. It's about enjoying what you do, and then leaving my sons to get on with the next chapter.
A legacy,
and
sense, right?
I'll be around because I'll be on Islay, and we're not moving off Islay. And if I start slowing down a bit, then I'll come in 2 or 3 days a week instead of 5 or 6. I've got a very good team here now that we built up over the last 18 years. When we first started, we were 5 people. And now we have working here sort of 40, 45.
Oh, that's amazing.
And, you do have a responsibility for them. But no, look, we're in this fortunate position now that we have a brand that people quite enjoy, and that we're selling around the world, and we want to grow. We want to build on that. So it's not about us slowing down and saying, right, we're going to cap it we're just going to slow right down and put the price right up. We enjoying the challenge of taking the brand forward and challenging the sort of medium-sized companies in a way. And that's more to do with my sons being in the business, and that was never the plan. I just decided I was going to build a distillery and we'll take it from there. There was no set plan of where we were going to need to be in a certain number of years.
Did they enter kind of willingly? I know sometimes they might feel undue pressure.
No, there was no pressure whatsoever. I think they were growing up university school, whether it was school and university, when we started this, and they saw what we were creating. And I think they used to come and work in their school holidays, university holidays, and do all sorts of jobs around the distillery. And I think there was no pressure from me. It was, do you fancy coming in? And then one by one, they joined, and they are now taking on the sales and marketing role.
Yeah.
And I've stepped back from that because they are of the age where, social media and new ways of marketing and selling yourself. And I'm quite happy to step back from that role, and they are doing a fine job in taking that on. So sure. I'm quite happy now to stand back from that and look after the sort of nuts and bolts of things back here with my production guys.
Some people are motivated by money. Some people are motivated by individual success, visibility, you could say. But I was reading an interview with you that I couldn't say that it was the most gratifying for you, but does the enjoyment that you can see from people interacting from these beautiful whiskeys, tastings and all of that, and their responses and their notes, is that a motivating factor for you?
Oh, Christ. I mean, that's everything.
Is that everything?
That's everything. When you get people describing your whiskeys as something, great and fantastic and well done, I get a huge amount of pleasure from talking to people who taste our whiskey. Yeah, you get some people who don't enjoy it. That's fine because, they don't like the style of whiskey. But, I mean, for me, it's about what the consumer and what people say to you about your whiskeys. And on the whole, they've been very appreciative of them. And that's what gets me up in the morning. That's, to me, is very, very rewarding. So, for me, it was never about the money. If it was about the money, I'd have sold the business a few years ago and moved off. But no, this was about suddenly realizing a dream, and I want to see it through.
There's an element, I think in the States, we extol master distillers more there. They're like rock stars, whether it's Jimmy Russell or Fred Noah or whoever, out there in Kentucky. But there is an element of performance when I see these masterful brand people lead tastings, the best of them anyway, right? And it reminds me of my days on stage singing and all of that, and soon to come more days, right? But that element of it, that visibility, it doesn't mean you're the center of the brand, but you like leading those tastings, leading the tone, bringing people into your realm, your performance?
Yeah, I do. But I don't need to be doing it all the time.
Sure.
And I don't want to be known as this sort of, I know they like, even here in Scotland, the master distillers are put up on a platform, and aren't they marvelous, and aren't they clever people? But
right. Everyone
plays a part, and it's not just about the guy who gets up and talks about the whiskies, who's probably had the biggest impact. Look, I wasn't from a production background, but I learned a huge amount from Jim Swan. Massive. I mean, it's like a sponge when you talk to him, and he's so humble. He was so humble person. So he taught me so much about production and cask maturation. And basically, it was very simple. Here's set the production parameters, stick to them pretty closely. Don't change them around too much. And then let the wood go to work. And, I followed that mantra and will continue to follow that mantra. We've experimented with all sorts of different cask types. We're lucky that it works pretty well with most cask types, fortified wines mainly, not still wines, not enough backbone to hold the product together, the whiskey together. So, and now I just enjoy looking at. I've got a very good guy, Robin, who looks after production, make sure everything is followed to the letter, and that we produce a consistent style of spirit. At the end of the day, it's pretty simple. It's pretty simple.
Well, if you do the same thing every time, right?
It's pretty simple stuff, and you follow a regime. We tweak occasionally. We like to talk about different yeast varieties and what that brings to the style of spirit, and different barley varieties in the field and what that will do. But on the whole, you stick pretty rigidly to what works, the yeast variety that gives you the flavour you want, and let the cars go to work. And I think everybody does that, but everyone tweaks it, and that's what everybody's doing, because you have to have a point of difference, and the consumer enjoys hearing about these different things that go on or can have an influence on your spirit or your whiskey character. But you talk about am I a traditionalist or I'm an innovator? I think we're a bit of both.
Yeah.
We know what works now because we've been doing it for long enough, and we are getting to a point where we've got a little bit older stock to release, which is fantastic. But they're building a new distillery. You have to have a massive amount of patience,
right,
to get to a level like all these other distilleries have got to. And you were talking about the 30-year-old Brook Laddie that they're releasing. Well, we're a long way away from that. And I think for me, getting to 18 years of age, I mean, it's been a roller coaster ride. We've had great fun in the last 6 or 7 years, because suddenly the brand is being recognized and people are talking a bit more about us, which is great.
It's a little, I've got maybe a different perception of the brand than did you. Why I asked the innovation question at first is because many of the Islay distilleries, despite how great the whiskey is, and it could be because Diageo gets involved and I know how they work with press and stuff like that, but something about Kilchoman feels a little more from the hip. Is that translation working in the British?
Yeah.
Like it's not that you're taking unruly chances, but you're taking some and you kind of don't give a shit because you know they're the right ones to take.
I think it helps that that the decisions have all been taken here, and I'll take most of those decisions.
Yeah.
And shooting from the hip, I mean, I could be described as doing that, but I do it in a measured way, and don't take too many sort of silly decisions that are not going to work for us. So, look, I think it's very different being a small independent company. Independent is a big thing. Gives you more flexibility. In a big, unwieldy company, it's more difficult to branch out and do things.
Write the songs you want to write.
Yeah. And so that has helped hugely for us. And I think it also helps that people aren't being switched off from the large companies, because they've always done a fantastic job, but they like the entrepreneurial, independent, sort of family-run business that is going in a direction they quite like.
Yeah.
And that we're prepared to maybe take a few more risks, not massive risks, but a few more that the big companies aren't prepared to do.
Can you think of a time where you did take a risk and you didn't quite like the result?
Well, the biggest risk I took was building the bloody distillery in the first place.
Once you got something into a barrel.
I think, funny enough, there are some cask types that we've used that haven't worked.
Well, yeah, because you mentioned specifically still wine.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we've done still wine. They don't work as well. But it's interesting because and this is where you shouldn't sit in your ivory tower and shut yourself away and say, this is the most fantastic whiskey, and then put it out there and people go, well, it's not so good as you think. So, we're very careful now to gauge opinion, talk to all our distributors and our customers to gauge their views on things. And we've made mistakes.
So that's a great thing, because I don't particularly rule by consensus necessarily, because there has to be the loudest voice in the room, even if you're consulting among the other diverse opinions in the room. But when you talk about working with your suppliers, do you say, hey, we've got an idea, and you ask what they think about it? Or it's like, hey, we have a batch that's kind of almost done, and they taste it then? Where do you work them into that process?
I mean, I think we've done a few that I wasn't sure about, Sauterne, cask matured. And funny enough, it was all over the place. they can be all over the place. 6 months, after 3 years, it wasn't really balanced at all. After a year and a half, it was getting there, and then it fell back again after 4. And we gauged opinion from a few of our distributors to see what they thought, and eventually we released it when it was 5 years of age. And my view of it was that it was okay, but it wasn't something that had worked particularly well. But then when we talked to a load of people, thought it was one of the best ones we've done.
Isn't that crazy how that works?
So and the great thing is that when we've done these cask experiment, we call them experimental cask types, Fino or Calvados, rum, port, full maturation we've done, and it's amazing how the opinion differs massively. People, prefer the traditional cask types that the whiskey industry's used, but we've done a few that have really sort of not split opinion, but there's certainly more people enjoy them. I think it's about us showcasing our whiskey in a different format to traditional bourbon and sherry, which we know works pretty well for our character of spirit.
I think one of the things that has to exist in not only an entrepreneur, but someone that is putting their stamp of approval on a product, whether it's the branding or the actual juice in the bottle, is instincts, guttural instincts. So do you think today in these moments, if you were to go to create a blend or pick cask for a batch, that your instincts now are better than ever? Has it been a muscle that's fine-tuned itself?
Yeah, because I think, everybody will tell you that if they're associated with one distillery, they get to know how their spirit works in different cask types. Once you've done, and how it should be tasting after 5, 8, 12 years. And we're there now as well. Yeah. And that helps hugely when you're bringing together vattings. In the early days, Jim was there to help us put those together. And then it's been up to me since he sadly died to take on that mantle with Robin. You get to know your spirit and your maturing whiskey in cask pretty well, and you know where it's going to be. Certainly in the ex-bourbon and ex-sherry cask. In some of the more experimental casks where we're not so sure, it's a bit of fun, really, and you don't know where you're going with it. And then we might have to switch the cask, decant it into something else to bring it in a different direction. But look, most distilleries and the big ones will be filling mainly particular cask types, bang, bang, bang.
Right.
We like to just go out on a limb a bit and do these experiments, because that's about having a point of difference. Finishing had been done by a lot of distilleries, some better than others. And then we thought, well, let's just go for the full maturation in experimental cask types, see how we can do with that. So I think we're one of the few distilleries that do all these different cask maturation, and I think we enjoy it because it's a challenge for us. Although I was saying earlier that we're getting close to now knowing that it works in fortified wines, so that 18 to 23, 24%.
Yeah.
And still wine is more challenging. And so we know now that we won't be filling so many red wine and white wine cask types, because it doesn't have the backbone that we need to bring out the whiskey characteristics we want.
Yeah. Using the different casks, as you said, is a point of differentiation, which is certainly true. But do you really do it, because you talk about your marketing background, which point of differentiation is in Class 101, right? That you have a product that is unique in that sense. But does this proclivity to take chances, even though they're measured, to your point, is that an extension of you? Because the point of differentiation would make sense with your background in marketing. But I do feel for all of the whiskey makers and people that do blends and put things together that it is still a reflection of them as a person too. Does the whiskey feel like a reflection of you?
I in a way, yes. It's bound to, because I'm the one who's putting the whole maturation program together. But I do feel that, I've taken risks all my life. And so these are easier risks to take now, because we can do something with it. It's never going to be a disaster and we have to chuck it down the drain.
Yeah, right.
We can turn it around somehow. And so it has been something that I challenged myself to do, because I thought it was going to set us apart in some ways, and show consumers and distributors that, in a small way, we can show our distillate characteristics in a different light. And now that the industry is struggling with cask types, especially ex-bourbon cask types, because there's so many distilleries around the world wanting to get their hands on them. So it's, you have to come up with different cask types too. And so this shaved, tasted and recharred cask, ex-red wine cask, are something that Jim Swan actually experimented and pioneered, have worked very well for some of these. So, we're now seeing different styles of I'm talking Scotch, probably all around the world, of different styles of whiskey. I always feel, though, that every region should stick to its identity in terms of style, because in a way, I would never have gone away from the style of peaty, smoky, salty, briny whiskey that Islay produces, because that would be stupid. I mean, so you have to have that within it. And because Islay's style of whiskey has been so popular. We know that in different regions now, in different areas of Scotland, people are coming up with their own ways of promoting and marketing their whiskey, and that can only be good for the industry.
I heard, too, that perhaps one of the next frontiers for you, and being in Texas and being so close to Mexico, are tequila or mezcal barrels. Have you already started to explore those flavors?
Yeah, we've already used some casks from mezcal cask and tequila cask for finishing, and mainly a single cask. So, a year to 18 months in switch from a bourbon, ex-bourbon, 7 or 8 years of age, and those have been hugely popular. And the style suits our style of whiskey, and you have a different style of mezcal, smokiness. And it was also, it's very topical. Tequila mezcal is roaring its head off in terms of the spirit. Especially now it's come over to the Europe and UK. So I was keen to get my hands on some casks, and it's worked pretty well, and we bought some more. We'd like to sort of build up a relationship. We go to a cooperage over there who gets in the cask for us. We haven't got a direct link, which would be good to get at some point.
Maybe I'll do that.
Yeah, because it's always nice to have a link to a particular distillery.
Precisely.
So maybe you could help me.
I would absolutely help you. Those are my guys out there. Knowing that because you live on the property, is that right?
I live down the road near Bowmore. Yeah.
But you have so much work around you, even though of course it's rewarding and you enjoy it. Do you ever find that the balance between taking time to yourself to not work is a difficult balance to strike from working here?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think that's always been an issue for me. I was sort of, when we first started, for 7 or 8 years, it was 7 days a week, pretty flat out. We're now able to sort of step back a bit, which is good, because you've got to strike that balance. You can't just work every day and every hour of the day. Look, I think if I wasn't living on Islay, I'd probably be able to step back a bit more. But being here means you're involved in all decisions taken.
You probably smell it over at your house.
And then it's, going out into the fields and watching the guys, sow the barley and getting in the combine and helping out. I love that sort of thing. And, I think if I had to think of one thing that's really put us on the map in terms of point of difference, it's the growing of the barley here on the farm, and only buying. We don't buy barley from other farmers, and I was tempted to, but I thought no, let's stick to the single farm, single malt idea. Yeah, we don't produce enough here to produce everything that we're filling, but it's great to be able to control every aspect of production by sowing the barley and experimenting with different barley varieties. That's what really ticks the box for me, and then getting the barley in, and it's the challenge here on Islay, as you would have heard, of growing it, because obviously Brewer Gladdy, grow a lot of barley here, and it's great that they do it as well as we do it. They grow and produce a lot more than we do, but it gives the farmers another source of income, and it's important to give something back to the community. Absolutely.
So I've got 2 questions left, but this one doesn't count. This is to help me ask this next one. Do you prefer music or writing to consume? Do you read more or do you listen to more music?
I read more.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's say you're anywhere in the world, it doesn't matter where, and you can sit down and have a dram with a writer, living or deceased, to have a conversation and learn more about life. Who might that be?
Well, I always enjoyed the thriller type book that I always used to read on my trips overseas. So Frederick Forsyth or Dick Francis were very easygoing, but very great plots and storylines.
I imagine they drank scotch a bit too, as
definitely.
Most writers
No,
do.
definitely. They enjoyed their scotch. I've always read, but it's mainly when I'm traveling. I've got nothing else to disturb, get in my way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a nice place to be sometimes. Be fully present. Well, next question, or really the last one, is, and it's been beautiful to, thanks so much for taking the time out. Because again, I thought I was interviewing someone else in the lobby, which is fine. I love people. It doesn't matter, But what's maybe the next big swing at the distillery? Maybe trying something new, which we've already talked about, the tequila mezcal, which is great, or a new release that's coming out.
We've got a few things in the pipeline. We're waiting to see if they're going to be ready to go, but we want to do a fully matured Calvados.
Oh, yeah.
Cask mature. We've done a few finishes, single cask finishes, and they've worked spectacularly well. And they're coming on nicely in terms of full maturation. And we're looking at that for next spring, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll have to wait and see. We've got a few rum casks that we're keeping a very close eye on.
Mm-hmm.
Barbados rum casks.
Oh, nice.
So we'll see how they're coming along as something else, as a full maturation. So there's a few things in the pipeline, and I'm always on the lookout for a new cask site that we haven't used before, so that we can. We got some Pinot de Charente casks.
Oh, nice.
There's
no end, is there?
No, I think we're in a fortunate position that our spirit character lends itself to be matured in these different casks.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it doesn't work so well but we're quite fortunate that our spirit character tends to lend itself pretty well to a lot of these fortified wine cask types.
That's amazing.
We'll see how it goes.
Well, can't wait to drink more of it, as I had some during lunch. Really a nice accoutrement to my sandwich. I'm going to tell you right now.
Good. Which one did you have?
The 2022 PX, which is the second fill, which is beautifully balanced. Peat and PX, that should be a tasting somewhere.
Yeah, no, it's it's amazing how the sherry casks tend to bring out more of the smoky, salty, briny character than maybe ex-bourbon casks matured.
It's crazy.
You would have thought it might be the other way around, because the lighter style of ex-bourbon casks, you would have thought that bring it out more.
Yeah.
But no, it doesn't. It's definitely the sherry casks that bring out more of that peachy, smoky aroma.
It was delicious, and
Good.
I can't wait to drink more. Like I said, Anthony, thanks so much for taking the time out. I'm in Islay on your farm. I mean, come on. It doesn't get much better than this.
And it's quite nice weather.
The weather's great. It's actually sunny.
That can sometimes be pretty awful.
That's right.
As you've experienced since your time in Scotland. Yes. Yeah.
It lived up to its reputation. I'll put it that way.
Good. Well, it's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Cheers. Talk soon. Well, there we have it. Anthony Wills, the founder and chairman of Kilchoman Single Malt Scotch Whisky, recorded on Islay. I've recorded a lot of remote places, and it's been a very interesting and often beautiful journey going to these remote places and being maybe the first person that's kind of propped up a microphone in front of some of these makers and things. But Islay, that's a whole other story. It's one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. It's one of the most spiritual, like I say spiritual in the sense that you can feel the earth and stuff, and don't send me dumb Instagrams about it, but it's something that you feel it. Nature has a vibe, and Islay has the richest vibe of nature I've ever experienced. And to sit there and drink scotch with Anthony while on Islay in a clear day, I mean, it's against all odds, really. And it was a beautiful trip, and I stand by Islay Scotch Whisky, some of my favorite. Bunnahabhain is incredible if you like it unpeated, even though they do make some peated marks. But Kilchoman is different. It has a beautiful richness in its peat character. And it's something that, a lot of people, they don't like to smoke or it tastes like Band-Aids or whatever. Just get over it for a few. Try Kilchoman. All these beautiful cask finishes that they have. We talk about a new Calvados one that they're working on. They have a Mezcal finished single malt Scotch whiskey. Lots of great stuff. And it was an absolute pleasure to sit down and chat with Anthony. So thanks everybody for listening to Show to V with Mike G. No matter if you're thinking, I didn't know you drank anything but Mezcal, I do. Or if you're thinking, I'm not sure who I'm going to interview next, although I've got some things lined up this week, please keep them.